So today I want to go over an exercise that I've talked about a couple times, and it's quite simple. It's not always easy, but it is simple. And the idea with this is to allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling in a given moment. And I'll sort of speak to this logically, and then I'll describe how to do it and give a couple pointers. So I think very often it's easy to move away from emotions that we would label as negative in some way or unpleasant. So the usual suspects are fear, sadness, loneliness, boredom, frustration. And those are the ones that come up for me. You may have a different list. Confusion, I think, overwhelm, jealousy, anger. So anything like that. And I think as humans, we're sort of designed, and it makes sense, to move away from these things. So a lot of times we'll do whatever we can. It's almost like you're walking down the street and you see somebody you don't want to run into, so you cross the street to just kind of get away without having to see that person and experience whatever it is you're experiencing there. And at times that's a good thing to do. There are times when it's better to just stay away from an emotion. The problem is sometimes emotions come up and there's nothing we can do to avoid them. So if I'm constantly moving away from fear, it may not be doing anything to actually alleviate the fear. And there are many different ways of interacting with so-called negative emotions. This is one of the most direct ways that I know. And I will say that the result of this can vary. Results may vary for different people. So sometimes when you do this, in certain cases, it will all of a sudden, it's like the emotion just goes away. It's as if it just disappears. And sometimes it'll disappear for a while. And sometimes it won't disappear, But one thing that I would say almost always changes invariably is you become okay with having that feeling. Like there's no longer this fear or need to just get away from a feeling as quickly as possible. And so now the exercise, simply put, is to allow yourself to feel whatever you're feeling. And in the beginning, I would say, take it slowly, just feel a little bit. It's like dipping your toes, and gradually you can feel more and more to the point where you can just really take it on. Now, a couple pointers with this, because it can be kind of unpleasant. So the first pointer is, I always like to take a moment and allow myself to get centered and to feel good, and to create that as a sort of home base. I love this image of when I would play games with neighborhood kids as a kid, and there was always a home base. So you run around and maybe somebody's trying to tag you, but you can always go back to home base, and then you're safe and you can relax, and you're out of danger. So giving yourself a moment to really get centered, if possible, is a great place to start, so that you have that to go back to. And at any point, if the exercise becomes too much for you, I recommend shake it off. Do something to snap out of it. I've talked about this in the past. Go dance, put on some music, watch some comedy, do something to snap out of it if you're if you're kind of going in too deeply. So when I start this exercise, I always center first, and I like to have the idea of staying connected to my center while I'm feeling the particular emotion. So it's not about just collapsing into the emotion and getting lost in it, but it's actually feeling it while I'm maintaining some sense of being connected to my center. So maybe I have my feet on the ground, or I might have my hands on my belly just to remind me to stay connected to my center. And then what you want to do is invite whatever that emotion is, invite it in. And it's like we've done with other things. It's like becoming a connoisseur of that emotion. It's, you can notice, like, where in your body do you feel it? What's the sensation of it? And, does it stay in one place, or does it move? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it sharp, or is it smooth? Now, with some emotions, you may need to kind of mentally get yourself into it. For a lot of people, unless you're already in that state, it may not be easy to just go, okay, fear, so you may need to, the first couple of times, you may need to imagine a situation where you feel fearful. Now, for most people, this isn't that hard, because most people have, many situations where they feel fearful. It might be social anxiety. It might be stage fright, fear to bring something up at work. So you can use one of those things to bring up the feeling. So it's kind of like using a story or a fantasy to bring up the feeling. What I would say is, once you've brought it up, you can drop the story. we're really looking to oh, there's a siren. I don't know if you can hear it. So here we're really looking to just have a pure experience of the feeling, of the emotion, without all the story around it. So especially with something like anger, initially you might have to think, well, I'm mad at this person for that, and they did this, and therefore I'm angry. And you have this whole story about why you're angry. Once you bring it up, drop the story and just stay with the sensation of anger or sadness or whatever you're working on. And what you really want to do, there's a guy named Tom Stone who does a version of this. And what he recommends is, you really want to try to find the red hot center of the feeling, and really let yourself be there fully. And I would say, welcome the feeling. Or Pima Chodron says, lean into it instead of leaning away from it, and really allowing yourself to be in it fully. And at times it can have a very transformative effect. So, for me, it almost feels like I'm surfing on that feeling and really staying with it. Now, one of the tricks is, what I was saying in the beginning, is it's almost like we're programmed to move away. So at times when I've done this, as I'm going into it, part of me is still like running away. So I have to remind myself, okay, not away, really settle into it, really let it move through you, breathe with it. And sometimes it's good to take one particular feeling and do it for a couple of days. I read in a book about a gentleman who was doing this type of exercise, and he used to go to a park bench every day for an hour or so and just bring up whatever emotion was there, until he was no longer sort of dominated by those feelings, until, like, it was like the dust settled. Now, in my experience, like with something like fear, sometimes I'll do it and there's a moment where it's like you break free and it just disappears. That being said, sometimes that'll happen for a couple of days and then it's like it comes back again. And one of my teachers said, he had a beautiful image for this. He said, you want to make room for it. And he said, it's almost like you're inviting it in, like it's going to take up residence for a little while. And, you want to make it a welcome guest for a while, but eventually through not resisting it, eventually it just moves through us. Now, this can be so transformative, at least to get to the point of, it's not pleasant anymore, but I'm also not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of my fear. I'm not afraid of my sadness or loneliness or any of those things, which is an incredibly powerful place to get to. And, I was thinking about this the other day because there's this old book, which I've never read, by the way, but the title always caught my attention, which was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's a catchy title. I didn't like the idea, but I actually think it, at times it makes sense. At times we're going to have feelings, but we're deciding to do something anyway. This exercise actually gives you a way, kind of a different path to that. Like when I hear that title, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, it's almost like ignore the fear, which can be great. But this is actually saying, no, feel the fear and then get on with it and then decide what you want to move forward with. Not in a reckless way, but really just allowing yourself to feel it. So I encourage you to give this a shot. This is, for me, this is one of the most powerful exercises or meditations available. Like it can really free you in a very, very dramatic way.